Anton Karas, as you know from The Third Man. I'm Randy Credico. This is Randy Credico live on the fly on Free Speech Radio, WBAI 99.5 FM in New York City. Please support this station, support my program. Go to give2wbai.org. It's really essential. This is my 8th week back at WBAI, and we've had some incredible guests. And today we have another one, and that is the award-winning journalist, broadcaster, author, Afshin Rattansi, who I've had on my Assange show, but never on WBAI. He has a remarkable career. Afshin, I mean, you've been with BBC, you've been on CNN International. There's like 100, right now you're with RT, but you've never been on WBAI.
I don't think so. But then again, I mean, is everyone okay in New York anyway, given the coronavirus, your president having COVID? I'm surprised I'm even able to talk to you and your civilization there hasn't collapsed.
Afshin Rattansi, I got to tell you, your show, Going Underground, is my favorite current affairs. Would you describe it as a current affairs program? Is that the way?
News, current affairs.
Current affairs. It's my favorite show. It's on RT. Most people can't get it in the US unless they go online to get it, and which they should. They should watch this because after, I think this is our 8th year with Going Underground, you've had some of the greatest guests from Noam Chomsky to Cornel West to even Dolly Parton. I can't believe it. Where do you get these people to do your program?
That's the great team we have, as you know, Randy, so well. It all depends on that amazing team. We have an amazing team of people at Going Underground to get guests, as you say, like Dolly Parton, and I don't know how many other guests, because as you said, about 800 programs by now. So I can't even remember half of them. And amazing writers, artists, musicians, politicians. I mean, quite big politicians. I mean, one nearly even became Prime Minister of Britain. And we certainly have the father of Boris Johnson on quite a lot, together with hopefully lots of progressive voices and some less progressive voices from the United States. But as you said, you can't see it on network or even some cable operators in the United States because Joe McCarthy, is that the head of the House Un-American Activities Committee, who currently bans TV stations in the United States?
Not just here.
Or did he die? I thought he died, but anyway.
Well, he's still alive in spirit because I really find it hypocritical that I can watch BBC here. I can watch France Today or France, whatever it's called, that French show, but I can't watch Al Jazeera and I can't watch RT on television unless I go to the internet. That's like the only way I can get there. What's really the underlying reason for this kind of censorship?
Well, I mean, I wonder whether you can watch Al Arabiya, which is the Saudi Arabian-backed TV station. I know that Saudi Arabia has a tragic relation to New York City in some ways. Of course, this is geopolitics. This is geopolitics, isn't it? I mean, this is geopolitics at an appalling level, which must violate the U.S. Constitution. When Britain was thinking of banning my program and programs that I made in the past, I always looked over the Atlantic and thought, this could never happen in the USA because it can't, because you have a constitution. And yet somehow would it be the FCC? Who makes these decisions? Certainly the same kinds of people, arguably, who make the decisions on banning free speech in your country are those that are telling the president that he's a Russian asset and he doesn't believe it. So even though your president doesn't believe the same people that are banning stations, who's in control? Who is in control of the United States? It's beyond me right now.
I don't know, but we do have this station here, WBAI. I know that you know of it. You've listened to it. How important is a station like this at this point in history?
Well, of course, the problem, I mean, one could say on the hopeful side that people are listening more and more to the internet. We can see a host of new podcasts and so on. Yours, count down to the freedom of Julian Assange. These things are making headway now. And, I don't want to publicize Joe Rogan, but, let alone Rush Limbaugh. It's changing. The whole market is changing for TV and for programs. RT is the biggest news and current affairs television channel on the internet. I think it's 6 billion views on the internet, on YouTube. So even though we broadcast to 700 million people with a reach of that scale, the entire global South, we may not be able to enter the US market. These kinds of distinctions are mattering less and less, hopefully. And, one only has to look at where advertisers are choosing to advertise. Follow the money. They're advertising on the internet. They're making Zuckerberg rich. They're making Google rich. There's a reason for that. People are watching people like me and you on normal on the internet. But on the other hand, traffic, despite COVID, is always bad. So perhaps people are listening to this in their car.
Well, I'm fearful when I hear that, Google and Facebook are getting richer and richer. That would just mean that they could consolidate their power and then pull the string on all of this, couldn't they?
But I mean, in the United States, at least there's some history with the, were they Baby Bells? Or is that a type of Edam
Yes,
cheese?
yes, Ma Bell.
Is that a type of Edam
Ma
cheese? No, but so in the end, the United States regulatory system did kick in. And of course, there have been calls to nationalize a public utility, which is social media and the internet, given that we so depend on it. How are we going to get the nuggets of wisdom from your president if we don't have a Twitter account? The Twitter company should clearly be owned by the US taxpayer as a service to hear what their elected leader is tweeting. I'm not sure whether Biden will tweet as much, of course.
Well, he's got 1% of Trump's followers at this point in time. Why I like watching Going Underground, your show, is not, you're a wonderful host. You've been doing this for a long period of time. You've got great chops as a host, as an investigative journalist, but the topics that you cover on Going Underground, which you never see here, one of the focal points for me that I'm interested in is the situation in Yemen. Tell us about the situation in Yemen and what the American people are not getting information-wise.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch US cable news, maybe even some network news, you might get adverts appealing for money from the great American public to pay for this faraway country that actually does feature in the Bible. So the evangelical Christians in the United States may be aware of Yemen as a country. I think Job is reputedly buried there. But actually, there is something much worse going on than that. It is the world's worst humanitarian crisis, 21 million people under threat, according to the United Nations. It is the worst. And the United States and Britain are selling arms. They're training the warplane pilots of the Saudi Arabian government and others to bomb the world's, the poorest country in the Middle East. It is horrific. And when we get Save the Children on and Oxfam and different charities on to talk about it, they don't care that it's RT and it may be banned in the United States. They just want to get some kind of publicity, because there are forces within the United States. And I'm sure your listeners will know all about K Street. Maybe some of them work there. But in Washington, D.C.'s K Street, the arms companies lobby the politicians hard. They are lobbying for a war that threatens these 21 million people. Now, with an epidemic, coronavirus hitting the Middle East's poorest country, despite the UN Secretary General saying no fighting while COVID is on. It doesn't seem to have made that much of a difference. And their cluster bombs, there are amazing Yemeni journalists there looking at the markings on the cluster bombs, the graves of the children with the American markings on the cluster bombs as they fall. And why media is not covering it? I mean, even you, Randy, who are a vocal critic of mainstream media, and the sin of omission must surprise even you. At least there used to be coverage of the Vietnam War. There used to be coverage of Afghanistan or of U.S. involvement in Iraq or even Libya. Why not Yemen?
Well, not only Yemen, but also Venezuela. Let's turn the camera on Venezuela. You've done many shows on Venezuela, and the US public is not really cognizant of what is going on there. Just what are we missing in the US coverage or lack of coverage in Venezuela?
I suppose if anyone thinks the days of Henry Kissinger destabilizing governments in the global south is over, they are sadly very, very wrong. They may even know about Reagan and the death squads in El Salvador, but this is Obama, and this is Trump, and Venezuela is the country with the largest known oil reserves in the world, far greater than Saudi Arabia or the United States, according to mining plans. And when Venezuela tried to nationalize their oil resources under Hugo Chavez, had a literacy rate that went from basically they have food security now. They have a literacy rate that's better than parts of Washington, D.C. The United States has been trying to destabilize that country for so long, since a proxy named Carlos Andres Perez used to run it when I used to live there, actually. And today, your government, but it's not just your government, it's the European Union, it's Britain. They all have selected their own president to run that country. He is arguably a nobody. He never wanted to be president, but he is the State Department's, your Pentagons, your White House's choice to lead this country with the largest known oil reserves. Of course, he doesn't. It doesn't really matter. There are sanctions. The US is putting third-party sanctions on companies trying to trade with it. Iran is still getting through the blockade. Cuba, allied countries, they're trying to help Venezuela in a time of coronavirus because they need medicine like any other. Thankfully, Cuba may well have the first vaccine, because Cuba, of course, is the link to Regeneron, which apparently miraculously saved President Trump. So hopefully the Regeneron will be over at Venezuela before it even is in your country.
We are talking with Afshin Rattansi, the host and I guess your co-producer of Going Underground, which is on RT. It's on Monday, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. You can go to Going Underground on Twitter, or Afshin Rattansi on Twitter, just at Afshin Rattansi to watch. I watch, I'm a huge fan because it's the kind of information, it's like I'm on a desert island looking for fresh water, and I find it at Going Underground. But people are going to say to me, well, you're like, promoting Russia. You're going to get this kind of propaganda and pushback. But, your show, I can tell you got complete control. You got complete autonomy running that show. And And
I should say we covered Russian human rights abuses. We've covered specifically LGBTQ hatred, arguably by the Russian state. We've covered quite a few of those issues. And in fairness, we are regulated by some kind of weird censorship agency we have in Britain called Ofcom that says we have to be impartial. So if we have a Russian politician on our show, we don't cover Russia that much, I suppose. We try to cover the global south that is so omitted from other news channels and different perspectives. But when we do, we go harder on Russia and the Russian oligarchs and the Russian money stolen from the Russian people harder than the United States media that just seem to paint Russia as simultaneously. Actually, basically, your media, your mainstream, so-called mainstream media, just paints Russia as a all-powerful country that can do anything. I mean, it's like it's amazing, and I'm sure those in power in Russia are greatly flattered by this reputation. When, of course, Russia went through a terrible time economically when the International Monetary Fund and so forth were destroying life expectancy and so forth. It's taken a long time, I think, for Russia to recover from that. But if you read US media, Russia is the most powerful country maybe on earth, maybe China slowly.
Well, if you read U.S. media, you would think that Russia had nothing, or the Soviet Union had nothing to do with winning. And this is the 75-year anniversary of the victory against Nazism. And Russia and Soviet Union have been cut out of that narrative, even in Britain. Without Russia and without the Soviet Union, where would we be?
It's one of those things you can't be devil's advocate about, whether it be the Holocaust, whether it be the sacrifice of so many tens of millions of Russians, so that the Nazis didn't win in Europe and beyond. I suppose the United States, helped by Hollywood, has this image that the United States ended World War II. They were victorious. That's why Hitler died. Of course, that whole history. Whether it be Hollywood, whether it be education systems, whether it be textbooks, whether it be the wider media, it's all wrong.
John Wayne, he did it. It was
That's
John
right.
Wayne that, he was at Stalingrad and he put a gun to, General Paulus's head, and they went back to.
That's right. Hiroshima was something to do with ending World War II.
Right.
No, it wasn't.
The Manchuria.
John McCain didn't win in Vietnam. The United States lost against the people of Vietnam.
All right. We've only got a few minutes left. I want to talk to you. So much I want to talk to you about. We're going to have to do this again. But the last time I saw you was earlier this year at the first part of the this kind of a farcical hearing, extradition hearing for Julian Assange. You've been critical. That was 6 months ago, and they just had the second part of that. You've been critical of Western media, particularly U.S. media, lack of coverage over this, which is, I think, is.
You've had it better. Actually, you see, it's been better in the U.S. There's been your podcast. There's been Tucker Carlson on Fox News, champion of libertarian values, having people on talking about Julian Assange. We didn't have that here in mainstream cable television in this country. They just completely ignored it. And yet there you have a channel where President Trump chooses to go on covering Julian Assange.
Well, we do at WBAI. WBAI, I started that show, Assange Countdown to Freedom, right here with Julian Assange 4 years ago. So this station has covered it, but you don't see nothing on the trial right now. It just took place, that 3.5-week farce in the New York Times, not the Guardian, not the Wall Street Journal. Were you shocked when you saw like a dearth of coverage of this?
It is unbelievable, especially with the United States having newspapers that arguably made so much money out of Assange's revelations of the war crimes. And you mentioned how I used to work at the BBC. I would tell the United States listeners, don't listen to the state-mandated BBC if you want news. They had a reporter in that courtroom, apparently doing absolutely nothing to defend the world's most famous journalist and publisher, and who should be on the front page of the Washington Post and the New York Times every day. Those papers took his stories, made money off of them. Now,
how significant the contribution by WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, how significant has their work been in terms of journalism?
Well, as Daniel Ellsberg, the great Pentagon Papers whistleblower, said, he is Julian Assange is the Dan Ellsberg of our day, and in some ways revealed even more than he did. And just like Dan Ellsberg was vilified at the time, so is Assange. But Ellsberg seemed to be saying in court, in testimony at the Old Bailey here in London, that the way Assange is being treated shows that these are the darkest times for media freedom he's ever seen, let alone we've ever seen.
So what's your opinion of the way that proceeding took place, the way the judge ran that courtroom?
Well, as we know, we have a decision coming up in January. Hopefully it'll be appealed, but the judges themselves in this country have links to and this is the magistrate who was in that Old Bailey trial. Her boss is a judge who has a husband who has links to intelligence companies which were in WikiLeaks files. So this would be like your Supreme Court justices, maybe. It's a bit of a stretch, a bit like your Supreme Court justices having direct relations with, I don't know, who would it be? James Comey? No, I don't know who it would be.
Well, definitely with Raytheon, possibly. And
in fairness, their pensions probably are in Raytheon, so maybe that's not too unbelievable.
You have BAE there that seems to have, and British Petroleum, that have their fingers in everything that's evil in the UK. We have this conception that the UK is this like great avatar of democracy. I mean, we should disabuse ourselves of that notion, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, BAE Systems is the largest manufacturing company in Britain. When once we had amazing technical expertise, high-tech expertise, this was all dismantled as part of the Reagan Thatcher project, at least in the United States. Some of your great universities, publicly funded and with US taxpayers' money, funded the likes of Facebook, Google, and so on. I'm not sure their revenues are quite fairly divvied out to American citizens, given that they're now the richest companies in the world, including the technology that makes Amazon, who own, of course, the Washington Post. But you're right, here in Britain, well, after Brexit, maybe we'll become more we'll go from cousin to brother, or a vassal state of the United States, even further.
Well, listen, that was a very quick 22 minutes, I must say. We've been talking to Afshin Rattanzi, the host and co-producer of Going Underground, which you can see every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Go to RT. Any closing thoughts, other than the fact that this week, this Friday, the 18th or the 16th, is the anniversary of John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry? I guess you don't really cover that, but it's a big deal here. And if you have anything to say about it in 30 seconds, tell me, because we're going to go out with Paul Robeson singing John Brown's Body.
Okay, I know this isn't an advertisement for the NRA, but Beecher's Bibles, I think people in Britain need to know about them too. And certainly in the United States, that subject will come up after November the 8th, arguably, as arguments will rage in your country about who won this presidential election.
Yes, it'll be decided in the next century. All right, thank you very much. And we are going out right now. This is Paul Robeson, John Brown, Body.
Kindly down on the grave of old John Brown. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His soul goes marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His soul